Hi, this is Sally's Book Club, bringing you the world's best books every day. Today we're exploring an important work from Marx's youth, the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts of 1844. Marx was born in 1818. He wrote this manuscript at just 26 fresh after completing his doctorate. Within 2 years, as we know, Marx held a law doctorate and specialized in legal philosophy. He began challenging Hegel, the founding father of legal philosophy. Hegel believed political state laws shaped civil society's structure and rules. Marx argued this was backward. Political states emerge, from civil society's framework. He wrote Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of Right to explain this reversal. After critiquing Hegel, Marx dug deeper. If civil society births political states, then where does civil society itself come from? Marx concluded, survival needs come first. Food before philosophy. Only after securing survival can we develop law, art, and high culture. Thus, young Marx abandoned legal philosophy for political economy studies. He plunged into economic archives, shifting critique from politics to economics. This period produced extensive reading notes, documenting his breakthroughs. In 1932, Hungarian theorist György Lukács compiled these notes for publication. This compilation became the Economic and Philosophical Manuscripts we know today. In these manuscripts, Marx courageously tackles three fundamental questions. First, what's the origin and foundation of capitalist inequality? Second, how does this unjust system sustain itself? Third, how can we achieve true social justice? Such monumental questions. Using dialectical materialism, like a surgeon's scalpel, Marx dissects modernity's essence, dynamics, and trajectory. Reading Marx's philosophical language is no easy task. Fortunately, these three questions provide a framework. Let's unravel them layer by layer. Let's see what insights lie within. First, the origin and foundation of inequality in capitalist society. Marx lived through the great transition from traditional to market society. This was unprecedented in human history. This unprecedented transformation affected both nascent China and Western nations. Rapid productivity growth brought social chaos, particularly shocking wealth inequality and its consequences. The Little Match Girl, The Great Gatsby, Les Miserables, Oliver Twist, The Best and Worst of Times. These literary works testify to that era's injustices. Moralists could lament while enjoying their privileges. But Marx focused on underlying causes through rational analysis. Why did this happen? Through philosophical and economic examination, Marx identified a key concept: alienation. Before labor alienation, let's understand economists' three basic elements: labor, land, capital. Labor means physical and mental effort in production. Simply put, work, farming, manufacturing, IT, any economic activity. Lower value labor earns less. Higher value earns more. Today's programmers or athletes earn significantly more than average workers. But regardless of income level, if you live off labor, you're working class. Land, all production requires space. Farmland for crops. Industrial zones for factories. commercial lots for malls, residential areas for housing. Everything has its price. Using land for production requires paying rent to landowners, what economists call land rent, like tenant farmer Yang Beilo paying rent to landlord Huang Shiren. That's land rent. Today's white-collar workers paying rent in major cities, also land rent. Does your mortgage payment count as land rent? That's worth pondering. Economists emphasize land rent's importance. We'll revisit this later. Capital is seed money, money that makes money. It's money invested in production, machines, materials, facilities, labor. Even indirect investments like stocks and bonds count as capital. All production investments are capital. Their owners are capitalists. Society thus divides into three groups: workers, landlords, capitalists. Labor's wealth gets divided among these three. Is it fair for land and capital to claim labor's fruits? Proponents argue money, land, labor, each contributes fairly. Opponents counter. Land belongs to nature. Capital comes from labor. Marx sides with opponents. All wealth comes from workers' sweat and brainpower. Yet most fruits don't go to workers, Marx cries. Alienated labor. When capitalists hire workers, they're buying labor. Bricks, meals, art, all created by workers' physical, mental labor. But capitalists and landlords claim these fruits. Why? Marx's answer: the magic of alienated labor. Capitalists purchasing labor creates fundamental imbalance. Thus, labor's ownership shifts from workers to capitalists, with all products going to capitalists. From workers' perspective, their labor betrays them. Products become hostile forces controlled by capitalists. This is alienated labor. Assembly line workers produce phones they don't own. They buy them back with wages from capitalists. This pattern exists across industries. Your creations compel you to produce more. Capitalists accumulate phones, sell them for profit, expand production. Thus, capital forms. Ultimately, capital originates from alienated labor, from workers themselves. Ironically, more workers produce, stronger capital grows, increasing control over laborers. Hence, labor betraying laborers becomes literal truth. Understanding this process reveals clear patterns. Capital fundamentally means control over labor and its products. Office workers dragging themselves through winter mornings and crowded subways understand this control best. Capitalist power comes not from votes or divine right, but capital's purchasing power. This irresistible power lets capitalists control both labor and its fruits. Recalling Marx's view, labor creates wealth, yet workers own little of it. Alienated labor makes capitalists labor's masters. Capital accumulation through alienated labor reinforces control over production. This forms capitalism's foundation of inequality. After clarifying inequality's origin, Marx examines: how does this unfair system operate? From previous analysis, the mechanism becomes clear. Alienated labor is the root cause of wealth, polarization, and social injustice. This alienation process forcibly separates workers from means of production, divorcing labor from laborers. Throughout capitalist history, privatization, violence, and debt served as separation tools, drenched in blood and fire. Britain's enclosure movement needs no elaboration. The original sheep-devouring people tragedy. Modern Russia's shock therapy offers fresh evidence. Mass privatization bankrupted state enterprises, leaving workers suddenly deprived of factories and machines that sustained them. Average lifespan dropped 10 years as people were thrown into labor markets for survival. Assets sold cheap to oligarchs while workers sold labor at rock-bottom prices. Hugo's misery reborn. Separation is just step one. Production requires reorganizing labor with other economic elements. The 1844 manuscripts reveal capitalism's operation relies on market mechanisms and currency. What defines market mechanisms? Alienation's crucial component, the buying-selling transaction. Market transactions essence, recombining labor with capital. Land through price signals. Prices act as batons, directing resource allocation. Capital, land, labor. Non-compliance means losses and market elimination. Natural selection governs all. No escape from market logic. Price signals orchestrate social production through market mechanisms. At this mechanism's core lies currency, the universal value translator. Countless economic elements require value measurement for rational production and exchange. Currency enables alienated labor's value amplification and capital accumulation. This intermediary is currency. Monetary disorder causes price signal failure, market mechanism collapse, and production stagnation, showing currency's vital role. History provides abundant proof. Take Russia's October Revolution. War-viged Soviet Russia first stabilized economy through gold-backed ruble. New Soviet regime's first step. Restore gold standard to stabilize currency and economy. Both Soviet Politburo and Bank of England coincidentally pursued gold standard restoration. Post-WWII West Germany stabilized Deutschmark before reviving market mechanisms. Result: West Germany surpassed pre-war economic levels within decades. Currency holds such magical power. It redefines human capability. Pre-currency humans had only natural attributes. Currency grants quasi-omnipotent purchasing power, creating superhuman abilities. Good as Faust, 6 horses bought, give me their strength. 24 legs at my command. Human power expands with monetary power. Only money-backed demands influence production and exchange. Capitalists buy labor with money, workers sell labor for money. Currency purchases all things, claims all products. Thus, currency equals capital, equals alienated labor. The mechanism becomes clear. Capitalism separates labor from workers, reorganizes production through market mechanisms and monetary rules, sustaining capitalist social machinery through this perpetual motion. But this is only the first layer of societal operation. To truly understand capitalism, we must examine its second mechanism, class struggle. Note: this class struggle isn't political revolution-style conflict. Don't equate class struggle with physical violence. Violent conflict represents class struggle's most extreme historical form. In reality, class struggle permeates daily life as economic competition. Market competition itself is fundamental class struggle. Corporate market share battles? intra-bourgeois struggle. Factory owners, vs bankers, over interest rates, class struggle. Capitalists, vs landlords over rent, class struggle. Wage fluctuations, worker-capitalist struggle, all count. Most class struggle manifests through economic cycles and market competition, though occasionally escalates to intense forms. Like waged mammon strikes we often hear about, or trade wars between national bourgeois from Napoleonic Wars to WWIR. Incomes of labor, capital. Land reflect tripartite class struggle. Wages from worker-capitalist battles, rent from capitalist landlord battles. Profit emerges from these struggles, like three hungry groups fighting over a freshly baked cake. In Marx's era, three classes claimed private property through production factors: workers' wages, capitalists' profits, landlords' rent. Private property's essence: alienated labor. Alienated labor transfers products to capitalists as private property. Workers' private property consists of capitalist leftovers. Having dissected capitalism's mechanisms, monetary market systems, and perpetual class struggle, market mechanisms sustain injustice, class struggle perpetuates worker poverty. Now, to Marx's third question: how to achieve social justice? How to liberate humans from alienated labor? Marx's answer: communism, but not as commonly misunderstood. True communism means workers controlling their labor, not collective ownership replacing individual. Not outlaw-style communal living, that's just collective private property. This pseudo-communism erases individuality. Imagine policing hair throws and fashion as bourgeois tendencies. Hardly ideal. Such personality racing systems represent majority tyranny through collective ownership. Since private property equals alienated labor negating humanity. Soviet failure stemmed from state-controlled alienation replacing individual capitalists. Western welfare states fail by ignoring communist distribution principles. To achieve workers' true control over their labor, we must eliminate alienated labor and private ownership, reconciling workers with their labor. Marx clearly states, communism means sublation of private property and human self-alienation. True human reclamation of labor as essential being. Thus, communism represents humanity's return to authenticity, resolving contradictions between humans and nature. Others. It answers history's riddle, workers freely controlling their labor. Marx's vision: in communist society, no fixed occupations. People develop freely across fields with social production regulation. Hunt mornings, fish afternoons, herd evenings, critique philosophy after dinner. True liberated humanity. The economic section of the 1844 manuscripts abruptly concludes here. Capitalist private property turns labor into hostile force. Alienated labor accumulates as capital. Capital competition breeds concentration monopoly, splitting society into two hostile classes. Their dialectical unity in alienated labor forms private property relations. Operational mechanism: market exchange. Currency mediates exchange. Monetary logic and alienated labor form capitalism's dark empire. Human liberation requires communism, not vulgar collective ownership. but natural humanist. Communism, restoring labor. This constitutes the manuscript's core message. Remember, the 1,844 manuscripts are Marx's early reading notes. The newlywed Marx urgently fled Prussia for Paris, symbol of intellectual freedom. Before completing the manuscript, French authorities expelled him. Engels then dragged him into writing the German ideology, leaving these notes forgotten for a century. The manuscripts resurfaced in 1930s Moscow archives. Exiled Hungarian theorist György Luca discovered and edited them at the Marx-Engels-Lenin Institute. His editorial work made this text accessible to modern scholars. This publication became Western Marxism's cornerstone, establishing Luca C.S. as its founder. Later theorists like Gramsci, Foucault, Marcuse, and Derrida all trace roots to these manuscripts. The Frankfurt School blamed Soviet failures on bureaucratic alienation of political power. Their prescription, return to Marx's humanist communism from the 1,844 manuscripts. Althusser's structuralism rejected this as sentimental nonsense, incompatible with class struggle. Humanism weakens revolutionary resolve needed for systemic change. Rational calculation must replace emotional ideals to realize communism. Althusser advocated defending post-Gan Ibas's scientific socialism as Jungton. All theories stem from Marx's alienation concept, applied to critique both capitalist and socialist societies. This theoretical diversity forms Western Marxism's enduring academic legacy. Finally, some background on manuscript editor, György Luca C.S. He wasn't some oppressed proletarian forced into Marxism. Born into a Jewish banking family of Austria-Hungary, his father headed Hungary's General Credit Bank, controlling half the empire's purse. Luca C.S. could have become a Rothschild-like financial titan, shaping global credit. Yet he rejected his privileged origins. Childhood exposure to finance made him embrace Marxism. Abandoning wealth, he became Hungary's education. Culture, Commissar during 1919 Soviet Republic. Post-WWII. Luca C.S. retreated to academic life at Budapest University. He critiqued Stalinism from humanist perspectives, becoming Western Marxism's patriarch until his 1971 death. True conviction breeds extraordinary achievement. That concludes our exploration of the 1,844 manuscripts. Keynotes below the audio. Until tomorrow.